Hello and welcome to another episode of The Wild Dispatch. I'm Robin and I'm back with more skills and stories from the wild. We have another fantastic guest for you today. Doug North has actually just got back. Well, I guess with the delay of editing and processing that happens in production, he hasn't just got back, but Doug North has recently been on TV, on air, on the very latest season of Alone. That's season 12, the first one ever to be in South Africa, which is very exciting, particularly for me, because I spent a bunch of time over there, so I know exactly what the terrain is like, the animals. I've got some, first-hand experience, so it's a place close to my heart. Doug and I have a fantastic chat today. We cover all kinds of topics, the nitty gritty of trying to scrape a living in the wilderness in South Africa. And also then we go off into a bunch of other fun rabbit holes talking about our connection with the wild and even a bit of men's mental health too. This season is a particularly good one for reasons I've already explained, but it is not over yet. And if you haven't had a chance to check it out yet, then by all means, head over to the History Channel. The final episode of the season is going live this Thursday. That's August the 21st at 10 p.m. Eastern Time. That's 7 p.m. Pacific Time. Now, we're going to jump into this episode any second now, but first, it's time for a little bit of housekeeping. If you are new to the podcast, then welcome. It's fantastic to have you here. If you could give us a subscribe or hit that button, whichever one it is, whatever provider you are listening to, then that would be appreciated. It means that you'll stay up to date with all the episodes that are coming in every other week at the moment. If you are a returning guest, then welcome back. It would be fantastic if you could do all the things that people who enjoy listening to podcasts do. Give us a good review, give us 5 stars if you can, maybe even write something nice. All those things actually do help with the algorithms and mean that these episodes get pushed out to more people, which means more people become aware, and it means that it makes it easier for me to get hold of more fantastic guests like Doug. Right, I'm sure there's probably something else I'm forgetting, but I'm going to stop waffling now. It's time for the episode with Doug. Here he is.
Welcome to the Wild Dispatch!
Doug, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much.
There are so many things that we can talk about today, and I'm very excited to go down a bajillion rabbit holes with you. But I guess, first of all, we should probably set up, for those who don't know, you have just been on the latest version of Alone, the TV show on the History Channel. It's actually in South Africa this time, which is a place very close to my heart. So that was very exciting to be watching that. But I think, first of all, we should probably introduce who you are and what you're all about. From my research, and I'm going to not do you justice nearly well enough, but you're a man of many talents. And it's clear that you absolutely love making stuff.
Yes.
You've got like a long history of making all kinds of different things. I've got all kinds of things here written down as notes, like maker, tinkerer, flint napper, also clock maker or clock restorer.
Yep,
Yeah,
that's right.
so there's
Antique
so
clocks.
many. I think you also studied archaeology and anthropology, is that correct?
I did in college. I did in graduate school.
Amazing, yeah. So there's such a depth. I can already see in the background there. You've got some artifacts, various different ancient-looking objects there. So I'm sure they'll come up in our conversation. But I'm wondering, did I miss anything from my side?
Let's see. So I've also had a career in graphic design specifically for websites and that kind of thing.
Okay.
Spent some time doing sign fabrication.
Interesting.
Wasn't a long phase, but it was more of that making.
Yeah.
I think you've covered the major phases of my life. Oh, automata, making a contemporary automata was also sort of a major phase, though not a primary income.
But wait, so you just said a word that I don't think I even know what that word is.
Ah.
Automata.
Yes. So it's a contemporary automata is a fancy way of saying hand-cranked mechanical wooden sculptures.
Ah,
The
okay.
antique automata, many of which were made in France, were clockwork-driven, spring-driven devices that would have a figure or an animal that would imitate lifelike motions. And some of the most complex, people argue, are the first examples of programming and robotics. I was involved in a much more whimsical version in which the pieces were made out of wood, not incredibly complicated, and more in the realm of art than sort of robotics.
Yeah.
But that was a fascination of mine for over a decade. So I made several of those and some pretty unique pieces, like ones that will perform magic tricks.
So that was some of the stuff I think I stumbled across when I was looking on I think it was on a YouTube channel, or maybe it was on a Facebook channel I saw some things around that. So I was curious about that. Okay, well, that makes a lot of sense. Clearly, you've got a very creative brain. It was quite clear already from the last conversation I had, I could tell that too. You process things in an interesting way, and you have you're very solutions driven, which is really interesting. And I think that made for a really interesting series of episodes on Alone, because I could see different things coming into action, you solving problems, figuring stuff out. So it was great. Yeah, it was really good to watch you in action. And we're going to go into Alone in depth. I want to hear the whole story, beginning to end, the highs, the lows, the emotions, all that stuff. But first, I think usually I like to kind of jump in and give a little bit of context for everyone listening. So
Sure.
I'd love to go back, way back, to the very beginning. I guess the early moments that defined who you were. I mean, I wonder, you just did this big survival thing in the wilderness. Did you have much wilderness in your life when you were young? Did you grow up?
Yeah.
Well, I guess, first of all, where did you grow up?
Yeah, a decent amount. So I grew up primarily in Vermont, and my parents were divorced. So then I would spend every other weekend with my father in New Hampshire. So, I mean, they're two very small states. They have a lot in common. They're not exactly alike, but it's in that sort of northern New England portion where I spent my youth, and it was pretty rural, very wooded, and especially where my father lived. That town had, I don't remember the population, but it was in the hundreds of people. So very rural in the White Mountains of New Hampshire. So I did have a lot of exposure to woods, wilderness, time alone. So it was there was a lot of outdoors to experience.
Yeah. Did you have any interesting moments interacting with animals out there? Did you? I guess, are there bears out there? That's sure. There must be.
Yeah. There are black bears.
Okay.
It was strange. I've only, my first encounter, like up close and personal encounter with black bears, was only about 5 years ago. I was in a tree stand, white-tailed deer hunting, early in the morning. And I heard something marching through the leaves, and I thought, oh, it's a deer. I stood up quietly. I got my bow ready, and I was all prepared. And up over the ridge came a bear cub. Now, fairly, I don't know how old, but I'd say the cub was about this big. So not a year old even.
Like 2 foot across, you're doing.
Yeah,
roughly.
and then about 10 yards behind that bear cub was another walking directly in line, and behind that one was a third, and they just marched right underneath my tree stand in a row, and that was my first time I ever got to see one up close and personal, even though they're all over the place, and they were notorious for tearing down our bird feeders and things like that. But somehow they had always avoided my actual sight.
That's so curious. I mean, they're also so cute, right? Like bear cubs
Oh,
are the cutest thing ever. And
Oh, yeah.
I really love watching them. You really see, I mean, I guess maybe it's just because it's could be our own sort of manifestation that we're putting in, like when we're seeing things, because they have like arms and legs, maybe a bit more like us. But you can
Yeah.
see them looking around, thinking, getting distracted,
Yeah.
playing, having. Do you know what I mean? It's just such
Oh,
a kind of
absolutely. Yeah. Many of the Native American groups in New England, and I'm sure elsewhere, but I know a little bit more about the groups in New England, often put them in a category that was much closer to people than to animals. Some groups believe they were just people in another form. And though I am, I have no Native American ancestry, when I see them, I just feel like I can relate to that perspective. I feel like I'm looking at another entity that's sort of operating on a similar level to me, compared to most of the other animals that I might encounter in the eastern woodlands.
yeah, for sure. I felt exactly the same way. There's just something magical about them, isn't there?
I
Gotta say.
I fully, yeah, that I fully believe that. I can't quite tell you why, but I've got a real affection for them, and just think they're fascinating.
So you said you were in a tree stand, but I think when we spoke before, you said you did a little bit of hunting with your dad as well.
I
Do you have
did,
any
yeah.
kind of memories of that? I mean, you said that I think you mentioned that you didn't manage to be successful when you were with him.
Yeah, yeah. We did deer hunt together. I was quite a bit younger, and it involved a lot of sitting still and quietly in the cold. And at that point in my life, as I was very fidgety,
How
and
old were you then?
I mean, we did that from the time that I was, probably 10, up until I went off to college.
Yeah, yeah.
But I was very fidgety. I hadn't yet developed a lot of patience. That came a little later in life, and I think I think I was probably easily detectable. He would usually leave me in one spot and go to another spot so that we were covering more area, and I imagine that I wasn't quiet enough.
Covering more area.
Yeah,
That sounds
yeah,
like a classic move.
yeah.
Okay. So were you also a tinkerer then early on, like taking stuff apart and building stuff? Or did you
Yeah,
kind of...
I was one half of a tinkerer, and that half is that I would take stuff apart. That's it. I would not figure out how to get it back together, and this was, I'm a little bit notorious in my family for those early years where I would simply take things apart and then just abandon them. I was very curious about how they worked. I wanted to know, but didn't have that, whatever it
Yeah.
takes, like either the patience or the guidance, or a little bit of extra background knowledge to figure out how to get them back together again. So
Yeah.
I was a tinkerer in the sense that I took things apart, but it was only later in life that I learned to start putting them back together again.
But I think as well, you've got to, before you can get to the point of having the confidence to put things back together, you've got to have the confidence to take them apart, right? If you don't take them apart in the first place, how are you going to learn that stuff?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I guess it's inevitable.
exactly. And in recent years, I've seen a quote that says, if you can't take it apart, you don't own it. And I'm like, I
That's a
kind of
great
believe
quote.
that. I kind
Yeah,
of
it's
believe
so
it,
true. I also think that there's just like a far more satisfaction that comes from it, right? Like when you
Oh,
really
yeah.
in depth understand how something works. And
Yeah.
I very much have spent my early years afraid of taking things apart
Yeah.
just because it's very hard for my brain to like then process putting them back together again. But
Yeah.
I think definitely starting to get the rhythm of just figuring that stuff out, fixing things, taking stuff apart on my car and putting it back together again. It's so rewarding when you're like,
Yeah.
okay, I have more ownership in some way. It's true.
Right,
It's
right.
so
And
true.
such a deeper understanding of not only how that thing works, but the principles that make it work that then are probably transferable to some other thing you take apart.
Yeah.
So you start to learn, the almost the patterns of mechanics and
Yeah.
physics and the wear marks that are left on things, so that next time you go to take something apart, you've got all these little clues that can help you.
I was laughing then because I am very far from being at that point, Doug.
Yeah.
But I like the idea of it, and maybe that's something I can aspire to.
Yeah. Oh, I think definitely. I mean, I've certainly learned myself, and it's learnable. I think is my point. It's definitely a learnable thing.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's easy to feel like, oh, I'm not technical, or I'm not this, or I'm not that. But I think it's just about time invested and being able to be calm and patient and work through stuff, isn't it? I mean, obviously,
Yeah.
some people are more naturally capable at those things,
Sure.
but one quick note, actually. I'm just wondering, I think I'm getting quite a lot of feedback from your headphones, possibly.
Or is it this? Huh.
Yeah, I think it might be. Is that a mic there? That's right.
Yeah. Right here.
Then maybe that's the thing, isn't it? Do you have like a paper clip or something?
Yeah.
Maybe like that could clip onto your t-shirt. Maybe that would work.
Yep.
Let's try that.
Look at that.
There you go.
Pull up a little closer here. This cord isn't. Or maybe pull
We
this
should
a
keep
little.
this in for the context.
Yeah. Right.
This is
Problem solving in action.
in action. There you go.
Let's see. Wonder. Oops, I made that a little short. I can't raise my head.
You don't need to raise your head. You just need to speak up.
I'm hoping that helps.
It does. I think it does, definitely. Thank you, Doug. So, I think, if you don't mind, I'd love to jump into Alone.
Yeah, sure.
I've been so
Yeah, I
excited
could
to
talk about
to you.
that endlessly.
This one was special, right? It was in South Africa.
Right.
I'm curious, do you know whereabouts in South Africa it was? Are you allowed to say? Because it was like a little bit more cloak and dagger this time compared to previous
Yeah.
seasons.
Yeah, they want to keep the exact location, as confidential as possible. So they're calling it the Great Karoo Desert. It
Yeah.
might be a little marginal or on the margins of. So
Yes, yeah.
that's about how much I can say. I mean, we're not there. There were freshwater sources, both in large form and in river form.
That's actually what confused me as well, because if I'm honest, when I first saw that it was going to be in the Karoo before the episodes even came out, I was scratching my head a bit because I've hunted in the Karoo and I've spent time in the Karoo. My wife's family actually has a small farm there. And it is a very dry place.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I was scratching my head trying to think, like, how is that going to work? I've driven all through there, and there aren't many places I've seen large water sources or reliable water sources.
Yeah.
I've got to say, I think I figured out where it is. I'm not going to say. It took me a long time, though. My
Yeah.
wife was watching. We were watching, and she actually had to pause. She had to stop the episode a few times and be like, I can't watch this until I know where it is. Like, this is freaking me out too much.
Yeah,
So,
there are ultra fans on Reddit who, pause those like above shots of when it says like Doug and it says like the above shot of where I am. They'll get on Google Earth and try to work it out. So she's not alone in that.
yeah, okay. Well, there's a lot of land that looks like those kind of mesa hilltops and things like that. There's a lot of hills that look like that in the Karoo.
Yeah, the
So good
copies.
luck.
Yeah, yeah.
Good luck with that. Okay, so a few things, other things I was wondering. How long did you know before you were in, or you were in the running, and then how long before you knew where you were going? Because that obviously has a big effect on the objects that you choose to take with you, your 10 items, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So the casting process started around December of the previous year. So I guess that's December of 2023, and seemed to be moving pretty quickly. Now that's if you know something about the casting process, you know that that's early.
Yeah.
And so that's an indication that you may be going to the Southern Hemisphere, though it's not a guarantee.
Okay, yes.
As I got further into the process and it looked like my candidacy was being taken more seriously, we were told that the location was going to be very different from past seasons, which are typically boreal forest, Arctic, subarctic, that kind of thing, and that it would be more arid.
Okay.
So that's still a lot of ground that one could cover. So probably Southern Hemisphere, more arid. but that's about how much I knew until about 1 month before we actually arrived on site.
Wow. Okay.
That final disclosure of the exact location only happens when the final 10 contestants and 2 alternates have been selected. So we needed to make a commitment to go wherever this was with pretty limited knowledge. And then we had about a month, I mean, give or take some days, to make whatever changes we needed to make or study whatever we think we needed to study. So it's a pretty limited amount of time to zero in on a very specific environment.
Yeah. So were there any objects that you changed that was suddenly it was obvious once you knew where you were going? You're like, okay, I'm gonna change this object, I'm gonna change this object. I'm sure you had a few things that you were in two minds about anyway.
Yeah. So I've been training with 10 items from the Alone list for about 5 years now as sort of a regular practice. But it's all been cold weather environments that I know well. My list was pretty well established. Like I didn't imagine I was going to change anything. But once I learned the particular location, a couple new things really started to come to mind. And foremost among those was the option to bring a metal canteen or water bottle, in addition to the cooking pot that one can choose, and salt. These were the two things that struck me as possibly important changes that I was going to want to make specifically for the new environment.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of an obvious thing, I guess, but dehydration is a real issue.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
your brain isn't going to work properly. There's lots of things that are going to start going wrong if you're dehydrated. So I think that's a good shout. But there's only 10 items. What were the things that you had to sacrifice then that you were like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, well,
Right.
I'm going to
Yes.
lose that.
Right. So the things that were nudged out of the way because of those choices, not hard and fast, but there's 3 things that are most likely. One would have been a silky saw for very efficiently cutting wood. Some type of cordage, either paracord or bank line. I probably would have gone with the bank line because you can take it apart and then you've got 7 thin strands and the outer sheath. It just gives you so much cordage, and in 2 different sizes. It's hard to not appreciate that. And then finally, I've dabbled with the idea of choosing one of the food rations. You're allowed to bring up to 2 of the food rations that are available. And had I done that, I would have chosen Pemmican, which is a Native American trail food that keeps indefinitely, made up of powdered meat and some sort of fat or lard, and often some kind of dried berries.
Okay, so I think pemmican has been something that's often been on the list of items for people in previous seasons of Alone, right? But it doesn't usually make that much of an appearance very often. But it's quite an interesting thing, isn't it? Like it's not been super on my radar, but I've heard of the name before. But tell me about it. Like, tell me a bit more about it. You've even done a YouTube episode about it, right?
I have, yeah.
And that whole thing.
Yeah.
I watched that just the other day. It's quite an interesting thing.
It is. It's a remarkable food. So many Native American groups made it. Typically, they would. It was based around some sort of meat, often venison, but it didn't have to be. That would be dried, and then usually pounded into a powder. And then some type of fat was added in. Maybe it was bear tallow or some other type of fat like that in very high concentrations. And it's the presence of that rendered fat that would allow this stuff to keep without refrigeration for a really long amount of time. They would often mix in dried berries as well, depending on the geographical location or the seasonal availability, and also taste preferences. Could be cranberries, blueberries, wherever you happen to be and what you prefer. But the real magic of this stuff is that it's high in protein, it's high in fat, and it does not spoil. So ultimately, polar explorers discovered this stuff, and they first had a formulation that they would bring for their dogs, and then they would bring for the people. And then when tough times hit, the people would inevitably eat the stuff for the dogs.
Yeah.
And then eventually they just decided on one formula for both man and dog.
Okay. Yeah.
And because the stuff will keep, it can keep for decades if it's properly prepared and doesn't have any, moisture. Like if you haven't included things like nuts or something, or dried fruits, but like really dry powdered fruit, it can keep almost indefinitely.
It's like the ultimate survival food, I guess. One phase in that sequence that you said though about the dogs eating the dog's food, the last part of that is usually eating the dogs as well.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. That's what comes next.
That's the
Right.
next
I didn't know if I should just leave that as subtext, but yeah, you don't have to listen to too many Arctic exploration stories to know that it's not great to be a dog on one of those trips.
No, it is not. I mean, it may be great at the beginning, but you don't have a long shelf life, that's for sure.
No.
Yeah. Also, you mentioned in that video, there were a few little pop-ups that were very curious to me. You said the Pemmican War of 1812. Do you know about that? Like, give me a bit of context there. Okay.
I know a little. So during the colonial era in Canada, those regions were dominated by fur trading companies, like the Hudson's Bay Company as an example. Okay. And there were several rival fur trading companies. So they're vying for power along with, forces from what would become the United States, along with various First Nations and Native American groups. And they're all sort of in this exchange of goods and vying for power and trying to stay alive. And the fur trade is driving all of this expansion of the Europeans deeper and deeper into the continent. And pemmican became such a crucial part of that process of the ability to survive out there for months or years at a time, and the ability to trade effectively with the First Nations, that it became apparent that if you could control the distribution of pemmican, you could then control largely or to a huge extent the fur trade itself, which meant that you controlled the money and the access to the land. And so it ended up, one of the fur trading companies tried to change I don't remember the details, but they tried to change the deal with respect to pemmican, like they would be the sole provider or something. And this led to an obvious power, a dynamic in the power, and such that it broke out into violence.
Yeah, that's pretty wild.
Yeah. So it was that important that, driving, it was sort of the engine, the fuel of all that fur trapping and exploration and conflict that was going on, that if you didn't have that, you really couldn't do it effectively.
Yeah,
and
you
so
need that backup.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess I'm curious about then, you have made pemmican and used it. Has there ever been a time that it's come in handy for you on a trip? I mean, I'm sure it's just part of your itinerary, but has there been moments where you're like, oh, I'm glad I got this?
Yeah, it's always welcome. It's not everybody loves it because the mouthfeel is typically very fatty.
Okay.
But it can be fried, or the basis for like a hash if you mix it with other things, potatoes or that kind of thing. It can also make the basis for a really good soup. You put some of that in, you've already got fat and protein. And then if you've managed to forage something or managed to trap or kill something, then you just add it, and suddenly it becomes more and more rich. So I don't have any moment where it like saved my life or anything, but it is an amazing thing to have just on its own or
Yeah.
as the basis for something that you can build from. So it's kind
Good for
of
morale.
remarkable in that way. I can't think of too many other things
Yeah, yeah.
that function in that way.
Well, that must be good for morale as well. Like I
Oh
know
yeah.
when I'm out on the mountain for a long time, something
Yeah.
that's really fatty and like just dense is always well appreciated. That's for sure.
Oh yeah, it's really helpful in the cold climates. You need that fat. You really do, and of course the protein is super beneficial in terms of maintaining your muscle mass and for endurance
Yeah, yeah.
and if
Of
you're in
course.
ketosis, then you're using that right away
Yes.
anyway. So
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
sort of
yeah.
you're backfilling the stuff that you're kind of using right up.
Yeah. So I'm not sure. Did I ask this already? But in the prep, did you plan to, or I mean, I guess you had a month notice. Did you try and pack on some weight? Did you do any
Yeah,
like stacking? I mean,
yeah,
you didn't
yeah.
seem like you were carrying too much when you got there.
Well, that's kind of you. I look at the photos from the before the drop episode, and I think, oh, what a chunker. I weigh 40 pounds more than I weigh right now.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah, yep. I now not all of that was put on in one shot
Yes.
for season 12. As we might have discussed, I was nearly cast to season 8, and at that time, I put on weight in anticipation of going on that season. And then over the next 4 years, I lost half of the weight that I put on for that.
Yeah.
So I had never gotten back down to what I consider my normal weight, which is where I'm at now. And so when it came time for to prepare for season 12, I did put on additional weight, but I didn't put on a full 40 pounds of additional weight.
Yeah.
I put on about half of that in preparation for season 12, and there's varying schools of thought on that, whether it's more harmful or helpful.
Really?
It's a complex calculus. Yes, you're bringing more calories around your waistline for sure,
Yeah.
but your caloric needs also go up. Your center of gravity changes higher,
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
and if you're on rough terrain, it's suddenly you don't know how to handle your own body. And and where we were in South Africa was just the perfect place to break an ankle.
Yes.
And then your body's always sort of trying to seek some sort of homeostasis, and if you go in there and you rapidly lose this weight because you need so many calories, you're throwing your body all out of whack, and you're sort of alerting it that you're already in some sort of desperate survival situation. So there are different schools of thought about how much is a good idea, and how much do you want to play sort of that passive starving game versus maybe being your full physical self and being more active and trying to procure your food. So there's a lot to factor in.
There is. It's definitely. I mean, having watched a lot of the seasons, it definitely seems like people who go in with a lot of weight have a small advantage in some ways. Maybe there's elements that they don't show, because that's the other thing as well, right? Like,
Yeah.
you can only get so much of a story.
Yeah.
But having that backup, I see it kind of as like the 11th item.
Yeah.
If you can have a big belly,
Yeah.
then that's a pretty good item to have. You carry that. That's your emergency rations right there. I mean, it's an obvious thing to
Yeah.
say.
Yeah.
I mean, my weight can fluctuate very easily. So some people, it's hard to put weight on. It's hard to lose weight.
Yeah. Yes.
For me, it's getting harder to lose weight.
Yeah.
but
That
definitely
seems to be
easy
the
to-
trend as one gets older.
Definitely easier to put it on.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
then another thing I was wondering is how long, when you arrived in South Africa, how long did you have to acclimatize before the thing kicked off? Was it like a couple of weeks? I think when I spoke to Dave Holder, who's in the training, he said it's usually like a couple of weeks of like getting stuff figured out. And
Yeah. Well,
before
first of
starting.
all, shout out to Dave Holder. Love that guy. He's an amazing person, amazing resource, and I was glad he
Yeah.
was there.
he's a top bloke.
Oh boy, for sure. So we had about 10 days to spend in what they call orientation camp. So
Yes.
it's in the area, but not actually on the precise locations that we were going to be on. So, we're within miles of it. So the weather is typical. The plants, maybe typical, maybe not typical. The geography might not be quite the same. The animals you encounter might not be quite the same. So in the area, but not like precisely where we were going to be.
Okay. The other thing I was wondering as well is just because whenever I travel over to South Africa, first of all, it's a long journey, right?
Yeah.
Like for me on the West Coast, even more so, maybe only slightly more, but it can be
Yes.
like two 10-hour flights or whatever variety of that. It could be like a 5-hour flight and a 16-hour flight. There's a long
Yeah.
way. So it's a lot of travel. It's exhausting.
Yeah.
And then from the West Coast, it can be like a 10-hour time difference. I guess for you, that's like maybe a 7 or potentially 6 or 7
Yeah.
hour time
Yeah.
difference. So your body is going through a lot right
For
now. So
sure. Yeah.
it's good to have a bit of time to get your head
Yeah.
above water.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so you had
They,
that.
yeah. Yeah, I was on a 14-hour flight from the East Coast of the United States, 14 and a half hours. And then we still had a small plane ride to take and then a long car ride to take. So it was a lot of travel, and they didn't expect very much of us the first, day and a half. And then as the 10 days progressed, they sort of ramped up how much they had us doing in the way of preparing for the ultimate experience.
So we talked a little bit about the items, and I want to go back to that as well because I'm curious about all the choices that you made, and you've made some really interesting adjustments to your items. But I think something that we discussed before, we just talked about pemmican and food and prepping in that way. But water, I think, was just obviously a major factor. In some ways, it was slightly less of a factor because there were actually some quite big bodies of water near you in this season than I imagined with the Karoo. I was still trying to figure out how that was going to work.
Yeah.
But it sounds like from our previous conversation, you had some kind of revelations about water, access to clean water, and that whole situation here in the whole world as well.
Yeah, that's true. We were all placed on some body of fresh water, whether it was the edge of a lake or a small river. So it would have been a very short contest if they hadn't done that.
That's for
Now,
sure.
the quality of that water was not good, and that was made clear to us, from the very start. So we knew that we would have to boil every drop that we consumed. There's just no doubt about that. No sneaking around that. It was a fact of life. And
Did they explain why it's not clean? Is it like so many animals or what?
not precisely, though there were, once you got out there, it was obvious that there were a tremendous amount of animals, and they were all going to the same water source that you were going to.
Yeah.
And you can probably infer that if you're on a river system that's moving through Africa, there's probably various fertilizers or sewage treatment or lack of sewage treatment somewhere upstream that's going to affect the quality of the water. I mean, I'm speculating, but I don't think that's an unreasonable assumption to make. So
Not at all.
between the human involvement and the huge abundance of game animals, it became clear that was probably the primary concern.
Okay. But you were saying about water, and yeah, I'm just curious. Then, the reality of the scarcity of water in the sense of clean
Yeah.
water, and
Yeah.
did that kind of change your perspective? Or,
It
I
did.
mean, I guess we take it for granted here that we have water.
Oh boy, I had no idea how much I take it for granted. I've done survival training expeditions of a week or so, in which, as a matter of preparation and training, I boiled all of my water. And I found that to be, very time consuming, very tiring, very laborious. But in this situation, where the environment is so incredibly dry, I needed to consume, I would say at least 6 quarts a day, depending on my level of activity. It could be more. And so a huge portion of my time was focused on collecting that water, collecting firewood, making a fire, boiling that water, letting that water cool down as much as I could wait, and then consuming that water. And that was all I could do. It left, almost nothing for even washing my hands. It was a decision between, like, do I want to drink this much more water or attempt to wash, my hands? And the decision was almost always to drink that water. It was almost impossible to meet your hydration needs in an environment like that, being as active as we were being. And it really made me feel for people in that part of the world and many other parts of the world who don't have access to clean water. Either it's far away or it's not pure, or both. And it struck me, how much it was dominating my life over the time that I was on the show. And for some people, that's their daily existence. And for some people, they face dangers between where they live and their water source that I wasn't even worrying about. And so it really struck home that is a very desperate and difficult and probably really horrible way to live. And for the first time in it just suggests a level of privilege that I've enjoyed. It struck me that fresh water really should be, a human right.
Yeah.
We all need air to breathe, or we don't live, and we all need water to drink, or we don't live. And it really hit home to me that's such an important thing, and that we do have. It's becoming increasingly scarce. The hydrologic cycle that you might have been taught in school, it's not as straightforward as that, and that a lot of the water that we're pulling from the ground isn't immediately replaced, and that we need to start taking this into account, especially as the climate seems to be getting warmer. This problem is not going to get better unless we do something about it collectively.
It's also interesting, you made me think that there's an element of potentially political control as well in some aspects, right? Because if you want to
Absolutely.
control a large group of people, if they don't have that access or they don't have clean water, if you're spending a huge amount of your time and energy just functioning as a basic human being, how are you going to have the space to worry about other things like changing a government or...
Absolutely, 100%. It's a very, hate to say it, a very effective means of social and political control, even more so than food. And we're seeing how that's playing out in various parts of the world right now. And the indigenous people, many of the indigenous peoples in South Africa and adjacent countries have been controlled or dispossessed of lands by giving them access to a borehole, which then they become dependent on, and meanwhile their traditional hunting grounds are taken over for various other uses, and they're basically not allowed back. So you're absolutely right that it can be used as a very effective means of taking control of land and controlling people. Yeah.
And then knowledge, right? Because if over time skills and things don't get passed down, that's happened. I mean, I think it happened here in the US, and it happened in many places, I'm sure, where it's about just creating that dependency and then kind of
Right.
eradicate the culture, then it stopped becoming a potential conflict,
Right.
which is a very
Right.
dark. We're going down a dark alleyway now.
Well, it is dark, but it is also it is a reality of many places in the world, and different mechanisms have been used as that lever of power. But I think where I'm from, water is sort of overlooked as one of those
Yeah.
possible mechanisms of power. But certainly, where I was in Africa, it could be, or it has been, a very particularly powerful one.
It became very clear. I
Yes.
mean, I remember actually, I was in Cape Town a few years ago. There was a we'll get out of this rabbit hole soon.
Sure. Yeah.
But I remember when I was in Cape Town a few years ago, I stayed there for a couple of months, and they were saying that kind of Cape Town was just a few days away from having no water, from running out, like a major city, one of the major cities in the country.
Yeah.
It's not in that situation now, but it was definitely interesting to be there at that time, because even things like showers, it was like you were encouraged to shower over a bucket and keep it to like 60 seconds or less. Use the water that you've like collected in the basin
Yeah.
under you,
Yeah.
and all that kind of stuff. And we did all that. We did everything we could to try and help the situation, reduce the amount we washed, much
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
much to some complaints in the household. But
I think more places in the world pretty quickly can expect to be looking at situations like that, and so it really deserves all of our attention.
yeah, it does. So, speaking of water, let's jump back to the items that you chose. You said that you took a bottle, a metal
Yeah.
Nalgene, which is interesting. I didn't even know that metal Nalgenes existed, which is
Yeah. They're not known for it, are they?
No. And then a pot. So
Yeah.
then I guess that gave you took that with the obviously transporting that water, but having the double whammy of being able to process more water. Was that something that you were really grateful for when you were there? You must have been.
Yeah. So when we were invited to orientation camp, we've had a certain number of our items sort of pre-checked. We send them a photograph and a link to some item on the internet and say, "Is this thing going to be okay?" And they say, "Yeah, that'll be okay." But you don't have to bring. You're allowed to bring more than the 10 items you're going to take, so that you have the option to change your mind during orientation camp. And so, I brought the metal Nalgene, thinking I'll probably bring this out there with me, but maybe not. And in the end, I did choose it, and I am so thankful that I did, because it allowed me to process. So the pot is 2 quarts, and the canteen is about 1. And so that it allowed me to process 50% more water with 1 fire.
Yes.
It also allowed me to very securely take water with me, scouting, fishing, hunting. You could carry the pot. It has a lid. You could carry it, but it's kind of clanky. It's not. The pot doesn't seal exactly. You can't just throw it in a pack. It takes a lot more care. It's going to take up the use of a hand. And of course, if you're lucky enough to find something to eat, whether it's vegetable or animal, well, you then have something to cook in and something to continue to purify water in,
Yes.
which is an awfully nice thing. I mean, yes, you can make a soup out of everything that you decide to eat, but I found that the need for water on top of what I was eating was still paramount, and so I would want that dedicated water container for additional purification, regardless of whether or not I was cooking in the pot.
So that was one of the best decisions you made, I'm going to assume, from the enthusiasm.
I think so.
Then I guess, was there anything that you regretted the choice of taking that became clear after a while? Well, this wasn't as useful as I thought it was going to be.
I don't know that I would change anything. I didn't use my bow much. That was largely by design. I did take a few shots at cormorants and geese. I didn't hit any of them, but my plan was to establish myself in the area, get a relatively safe temporary camp, scout, locate some good plant food sources, figure out the fishing situation, and then work on a shelter, and then get serious about trying to find a bigger animal. So I wasn't very focused on actually hunting during the time I was there, because I had that planned for the next week or 2 weeks out. And but I took my bow everywhere.
Okay.
Because you never know, especially with the amount of wandering around that I was doing. There were animals everywhere, and so opportunities could have presented themselves. So while I didn't really use it, I'd take the bow again. But I think that's the thing that probably got the least use.
It's one of those things, right? Like you won't need it for 99.9% of the time, but that 0.1% you get the opportunity, it's going to like completely change your whole experience.
Yeah, total game changer if you get one good sized animal. So yeah, absolutely. I wouldn't go out there without it, but it was definitely the thing that I used the least. I did use it to hold a camera a lot. So in that respect, it proved quite useful.
It's like a good dolly.
Yeah.
So then you said about animal interactions. What kind of interactions did you have? And I'm curious, usually I find when I get into an area in South Africa with a bow, it's like right at the beginning is the best moment, because the animals are least flighty. They've not had any exposure to anyone for a long time or at all. And that's like, you're most likely to make a kill in the first day or two. So did you get like some of those close encounters early on or at any time? I'm sure they probably had encounters all the time.
Yeah, the answer's both. The animals surprised me in terms of when they appeared and when they didn't.
Okay.
But right off the bat, my very first evening there, I was setting up my very first place to camp out, my very first fire, and I looked across a very small valley, and there was a family of eland just walking across. They saw me, I saw them. I was like, it's getting dark. I'm not going anywhere. You guys are safe. So they just kept going. So right off the bat, I saw these enormous ungulates. I've never seen an antelope species so big. And
it's so amazing, aren't they?
Oh,
I mean, they can weigh up to 2,000 pounds, the biggest ones.
Yeah.
But
I
huge.
I just visited the Harvard Museum of Natural History, where they have one stuffed. So I got to see one, how big it is up close.
Yeah.
And that is an impressive animal. The only thing we have around here in that category is moose.
Yes.
And, they might not be as tall as moose, but they've got the same bulk, maybe more. Very impressive.
It's almost like, if you were to describe that animal, I would say it's like a cow. It's probably most similar to a cow, although it is actually an antelope, but it's like a huge cow-shaped antelope.
Yeah, it's a cow with an antelope head. It's very peculiar.
It is. They're incredible animals. I've had some pretty amazing opportunities around them. I was hunting in an area and had spent time in the middle of a herd, which was so cool. I mean, I was too scared to take a shot.
I don't blame you.
They're so big.
Yeah.
And also, culturally in South Africa, if you're hunting in an area, if you take a shot, even if you don't kill the animal, you pay for it.
I see.
So I was like, I'm not even going to take. I'm not sure which one. I'm like, I know I'm not supposed to shoot the main bull. Because I'll be in big trouble with the owner. But I was about 40 yards from them, and they're so incredible. And also the thing that's interesting about these animals, and maybe you experience this, is that calmness that they'll have when they've not had any kind of alert or not had any kind of idea that anything's wrong. There's this magical time at the beginning where they're all just completely peaceful. Yeah. And I could just be amongst them for a while. But what actually happened was that a duiker, which is a very small antelope. I'm sure you must have seen some duikers.
I did,
yeah. Yeah, they're these little characters. They're about 20 pounds tops. They're tiny little, like mini deer things, like antelope. But they do these little alerts. They'll make like a snort or like just a little whistle or something.
Yeah, I've heard about the whistle.
And one of them actually just did that because an eland nearly stepped on a duiker that was just in the bushes.
Oh wow!
And that little noise just ruffled the feathers of the group of the eland, and then suddenly they were just a little bit more on edge and looking
Yep.
around a bit more, and then
Yeah.
they just became a bit more aware of my presence, and then they just
Yeah.
sort of they do this thing where they just gradually move away, right? They're
Yeah.
not running, but
Yeah, the animals are networked.
yeah,
They're networked. They one thing triggers another thing, and suddenly you've sent a little ripple through this network, and they're all alert all of a sudden. It's fascinating. I mean, I
Right.
know that exists here too, but
Yeah.
it's a different dynamic, and it's so interesting to see. And those are some very wary animals, I would say, in that part of the world.
It's unbelievable, isn't it? So
Yeah.
did you find that as a big? I mean, having hunted in the States and been in stands and successfully
Mm-hmm.
hunted deer, you saw a difference in behavior, or what was it? Just like it's kind
Yeah.
of they're more edgy, or there's something going on, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think they had a sharp eye out all the time. I'm not used to such big groups. White-tailed
So many
deer,
eyes.
travel. They travel in groups, but not so many, looking every direction at once.
Yeah,
And they really seem to the moment they seem to realize they're in some sort of potential danger, they're gonna create space. Whereas deer, white-tailed deer, they think, well, that guy's not going to he's not going to close the distance that fast. Whereas these animals were not taking the chance. They were like, whatever that is, I don't like it. Let's go this way. Even if we're not running, let's start moving. So just keeping that buffer distance and not taking any chances in that regard.
yeah. It's so annoying and so hard when they start doing that, because you think, oh, it's okay, I'll catch them up, but there's no way. Some of these are like an eland. Trying to keep up with an eland that's just walking slowly. They move so fast.
Yeah.
They cover so much ground.
Yeah.
I mean, the things are giant. So
Right, and the terrain is so rough. That's not an easy place to move around quickly and safely.
right, yeah, all the little rocks and boulders that you can trip on, and
Yeah,
it's hard to be quiet there. That's for sure.
yeah, and I found that the way I was able to be most quiet was to go from large rock to large rock. But
Yes.
I mean,
Okay.
that's like, you're really using every bit of your balance and agility to try and do that. And if you find a loose rock, then all of a sudden, you've
Yeah.
made a noise. Though I realized that noise wasn't that is the noise that the animals make too.
Exactly,
So
yeah.
it took me a little while to learn that I'm used to hearing the crunching of leaves,
Yes.
either giving myself away or giving the animal away. But that's not how it is there. It's the clacking of rocks or hooves on rocks, and it's just a very different sound. And I had to retrain my brain to be like, oh, that's an animal.
Yes, right. You get your ear in to figure things out. And
Yeah.
also even to a point of seeing the animals as well, right? Like if your eyes
Yeah.
are used to seeing that specific types of species, they don't pop at first. It's hard to see them.
Right.
Because their camouflage is so suited to the environment. I mean, did you ever have any encounters with kudu while you were there?
Yeah, I did. It was a different evening, much later in the process. I had returned and was boiling water at the end of the day, and on the hillside, sort of behind me, a small family were walking up the hill, and again, it was like nearly dark, and I was like, first of all, they know I'm here. Second of all, I won't be able to catch up, and then third, it's going to be dark. So I was like, beautiful to see, but not a real opportunity for me, but I was glad I got to see them.
Yeah, that's great. And also I think it's a big thing being able to make those decisions and not go I mean, I would probably go chasing after everything.
Yeah.
Knowing me, but it's a waste of energy, right? And also just seeing when there's a chance and when there isn't a chance. And
Yeah.
kudu particularly, their eyes and their ears and smell is unbelievable. So you've got to be in a perfect situation and be really lucky to actually be
Right.
okay, I have a chance right now.
Right. I did stumble upon a pair of sable.
Oh,
It
amazing.
was just the middle of the day down by the stream bed, very close to where I was camped. I was just moving from where I was camped to my favorite fishing area, just taking the straightest line. and went down into the stream bed. I wasn't trying to be quiet at all. Unfortunately, my eyes were on the ground because I was not only trying to keep my footing, but I was looking for artifacts. And raised my head, and there were two large sable broadside shots, less than 20 yards. But by the time I sort of got my wits about me and got my bow up, they were off into the bushes. But that would have been a prime shot. I mean, like really good shot, and it just caught me so unaware. I wasn't ready, and that's something I'll regret for a while.
Yeah, of course. But it's like one thing to be carrying your bow with you everywhere, which is hard enough, right?
Yeah.
But then also the focus that you have to maintain at all times,
Yeah.
whilst trying to achieve other tasks.
Yep.
It's so difficult. And the thing is that it's always that moment that you have a tiny lapse of focus.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's when it happens, right? Like, yeah, I had the same thing with an elk last season in Colorado. Just a brief moment walking into an area without, I hadn't seen anything in a day or two. There was a bull looking right at me. It's just it's the way it goes, I guess.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
A couple of other things I wanted to talk to you about, which is a bit of extra context, because South Africa, you might think, okay, it's a warmer place. Obviously, in the southern hemisphere, it's winter time, but you weren't allowed to. I mean, it is a bit warmer, but it's still cold, and you weren't allowed to take the normal sleeping bag kind of situation. Is that right?
Yeah. The producers made some changes to the standard item lists and to the standard clothing lists.
Okay.
So unlike past seasons, we were not allowed to bring Arctic boots.
Okay.
We were not allowed to bring an Arctic parka. And we were not allowed to choose a sleeping bag as one of our 10 items, only a wool blanket.
So, two things. I want to ask you about both of those things. So, was puffy, you were allowed to wear puffy jackets and puffy pants, or is that just not allowed at all?
It apparently was allowed,
Okay.
because I see some of the contestants wearing them on episodes of the show. I made an assumption that those weren't allowed.
Okay.
Now you can ask questions and run gear by, the survival consultants. I probably didn't push the envelope quite far enough with respect to the puffy gear, because apparently some people did bring some.
Okay, curious. What weight blanket were you allowed? Was there a specific, about the blanket? Because I would be taking the thickest blanket that I could possibly
Right.
take. But
No,
did they
the
have a
only
limit of how heavy it could be, or?
No limit on the weight, only limits on the physical dimensions, the surface area. So, but no limit on. It could only be a single ply. It couldn't be, two sewn together or something like that. It couldn't be a wool blanket lined with flannel. It had to be just a single wool weave.
Okay. So what you went with something that was not super heavyweight, or
Yeah,
that's what you had in your items list?
Yeah, I don't remember exactly why, but I can tell you this: when you're choosing your items, it becomes very easy to get fixated on certain details, like you're trying to maximize this or that, and for some reason, I became kind of fixated on getting every square inch of material that I could, and it was kind of an odd size and not one that was easy to find for whatever reason. So I ended up getting one that maximized the ultimate square inches of blanket, but wasn't as heavy of a blanket as I already owned. So in hindsight, I think I had gotten into some sort of weird mental space where I wanted more material when I should have focused on just a heavier blanket.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, it's easy. It's hindsight's 2020, right?
Yeah.
It's one of those things. I can imagine you were probably thinking, "Oh, I could wrap this around myself several times. It's going to
And
be
I did.
effective in that way."
Yeah.
So,
And I did. And a lot of my thinking with item selection is not only like, is it useful, but could it be used as a material? Is it a resource that I can modify in some way? So
Yes.
I probably had that in mind as well. That said, they allow you to bring a lot of clothing. So if you put on every single thing that you were allowed to bring out there, and then wrap yourself in a good wool blanket and wrap yourself in a tarp, well, I didn't have any trouble. But I'm from a cold place, so
Yeah.
so it hadn't bothered me, but I don't know if that was the case for everyone else.
So you mentioned before about some people pushing the envelope in some aspects with maybe some of the puffy things that they had, but I know for a fact, having spoken to you before, that there was a slight element of pushing the envelope with some of your items.
Yeah.
I really want to go into a bit more detail with the Leatherman. But I think what I want to do first is maybe we'll get to that in a second, because you made
Sure.
this amazing custom Leatherman with all these extra tools and things that meant effectively it was like a tool to mean that you could make tools, which is, I mean, I take my hat off to you on that. But the thing I would love to talk a little bit through is just your experience in general. Like, I mean, you only became aware of Alone a few years ago, right? You
Yeah.
said to me. And then suddenly that moment that you are like suddenly approached and then you have the opportunity to be there, like day one, you get dropped off. Did you get that drop shock that people talk about?
Certainly, when the helicopter door opened and they threw my duffel out, one of the safety consultants comes out with you just for a minute to say, your camera gear's over there, your little fire suppression tank is over there, north is that way, and then gets back in the helicopter, and and you're alone. Like in that moment, I was definitely feeling adrenaline. There's no doubt, no doubt. I wouldn't classify it as drop shock, and the reason I wouldn't is because I had a very simple and definite plan for those like couple of hours after I was dropped off. I was like, I knew just what I was going to be doing, and I set right about doing it so that I didn't have time to spiral out or think about possibilities or to get overly afraid of this or that. So the answer is, certainly a high level of adrenaline, but I think my planning allowed me to sort of just drop into, autopilot and go.
So you had that system in place, which you actually kind of mentioned earlier in our conversation today. Were there any things which became problematic that were like, oh, this isn't how I thought that it was going to go? Anything that kind of tripped you up a little bit or ended up being a bit more of an issue?
Like right after I was dropped?
Just in that process, yeah. Like when, I mean, it could be right when you were dropped, or it could be the first few days. Things that because if you've got a clear plan in your mind, right? There's the old saying, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. Were there any punches in the face?
Not really, though. I was dropped in a particular location where they had placed the camera gear and some other safety stuff, and where they knew they could, put a helicopter down.
Yeah.
And they leave. I film that. I film myself. Film those first few moments, and then just looking around on that beach right there. I didn't have to go anywhere. First thing I could see were, hoof prints this big.
Like
I
what?
thought,
That's like
okay.
8 inches across.
Like there are buffalo right here.
Okay.
Right here. And that was my number one safety concern. So while that didn't change my plan, it sort of put a fire under me like, okay, getting out of here, and sort of brought the reality of the risks like right home, like immediately, like, okay, this is for real. This is the thing I'm most afraid of, and it's been here very recently. So I did have to confront that.
To give people a bit of context, I mean, obviously people know, they've heard of a buffalo, but an African buffalo is actually, they call it do they call it the Black Death?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they do.
Yeah.
I mean, I've not been lucky enough to be around them too much. I've hunted in an area where there are some around, but you definitely got to have your head on a swivel because they are cantankerous, heavy, angry beasts.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
they're definitely considered dangerous game.
Yes, we were we were given some education on them, and I'm very glad because I mean, I grew up around cows, and they don't seem that different from the Black Angus cows that I grew up around.
Yeah.
But I mean, in terms of temperament, there's a whole different thing. So you've got these huge animals like elephants and rhinoceros, grizzly bears. All of those when threatened, will probably engage in what's called a bluff charge. You know, if they feel very threatened, they'll come at you. They'll show you how big they are. They'll show you that they feel threatened. They'll make you scared and make you leave. But, you know, they've got to protect themselves as well. They'll stop short most of the time.
Most of the time.
We were told that Cape buffalo have no such thing. If they're coming at you, they're coming all the way at you. Yeah. And there's been an unfortunate newspaper article just in the last 2 days about a hunter from Texas who was stalking a Cape buffalo, and it turned right around on him and took him out. And it's just that sort of thing. Like just they don't take a threat, you know, lightly. They sort of react with like full force.
Yeah, it's wild, that's for sure. I don't know if you've ever seen footage. There seems to be quite a lot of footage of those kinds of situations, but usually near misses, luckily. But yeah, particularly, I mean, a buffalo, but then a wounded buffalo. And that's the thing, is that if you wound one, and they're very tough, sturdy animals, you wound one and it goes off into the thickest, nastiest stuff.
Yeah.
You are suddenly in close quarters with an animal that is going to charge you at a heartbeat.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, as you said, like they can kill someone easily. So
yeah, it's just a freight train. It might be a big animal, but it is not something that even a sprinter can outrun. So
No.
you know, you would better find something high very quickly because you don't have many other options.
So then what did you do? You got there and you saw evidence that maybe this was kind of a regular watering area for those buffalo.
Yeah.
What were your options? Because I guess you didn't have that much time before dark.
Right. Well, I had identified buffalo as sort of my primary concern, and my secondary concern were the baboons.
Okay.
And so these two animals have a couple of very specific behaviors. Water buffalo, or Cape buffalo, I should say, that, you know, they're very dependent on the water. They have to get water every day. Some of those antelope species don't even need to go to water every day or at all. But they do. They like the shade, they like to wallow in mud, and they need to drink that water. And I saw those prints, so I knew that buffalo were at that location, and there was a decent chance that they would be at that water location again. On the flip side, the way baboons stay safe is they travel in groups, and at night they sleep up on the top of the ridges in the rocks. So I knew I didn't want to be on the water because of the buffalo, and I knew I didn't want to be on the top of the ridges because of the baboons. I knew I would need to be somewhere in between, and I wanted to find somewhere in between that hopefully had some brush, some cover, some acacia trees to make a boma, maybe some rocks to at least put up, you know, rudimentary, not walls, but just obstacles that would slow something down or discouraging it from just walking over me in the night.
Yeah.
So I knew I needed to find this middle ground with some resources, rocks and trees, and hopefully flat, just for the purposes of, you know, spending
comfort.
a somewhat comfortable night. And fortunately, I was able to find just such a spot, maybe 250 meters from where they dropped me.
Nice. Okay. So it sounds like things went as smoothly as you had hoped in terms of your initial plan.
Yeah.
Were there any moments then where things started to sink in more, like after a few days and you were getting into a rhythm? So talk to me through kind of if there were any mental highs or lows through your time there.
Let me think about that. I didn't have very many mental lows. I was afraid a few times.
Okay.
If you want to call those mental lows, I could tell you about those.
Tell me about it. When were you
Yeah.
afraid?
I can think of two times in particular, maybe three. About 4 days in, I had stayed in that same location. I just continued to fortify it with more and more acacia branches that I would cut from trees around me just to make my boma thicker and higher. Otherwise, I was pretty satisfied with that location as at least a temporary camp. I was sleeping. It wasn't yet dawn. It was pretty close. And I was awoken by this deafening bellow. As I said, I grew up on a small beef farm, and sometimes the bull would make this repetitive bellowing noise, and it was reminiscent of that,
Okay.
but deeper, and it may be a consequence of being in a valley, but it resonated throughout the valley, and I felt like I could feel it shaking, just that powerful of an animal making that loud of a noise. So I bolted awake. I turned on a camera, but it was still dark. It made that noise about 4 times and then stopped. And I was I'd never heard that sound before, but I was fairly certain that that was a Cape buffalo. And when I worked up the courage a day or maybe 2 days later to go down to that exact spot, indeed, I found a single set of tracks that had from a buffalo that had walked through the valley in which I was staying.
Sure. Big tracks, I'm sure, as well.
Very big tracks, and I learned something about them. That they were taking the path of least resistance for sure. They were taking a very well established path without rocks. Just choose, kind of like a person, picking the easiest way to walk. And I'm thinking, well, with that much mass, that makes a lot of sense. You don't take a zigzaggy, evasive path when you're the scariest thing around and you weigh that much. And I had developed a habit slightly earlier, where that initial spot where they dropped me off, it eventually occurred to me that I didn't know if I was looking at the tracks that I had seen when they first dropped me off, or tracks that had been made on subsequent days or evenings. So I went through and I stepped in all of the buffalo tracks. And then I had adopted that practice, so when I picked up the trail of the one that had moved through, I tracked it and I stepped in all of its tracks, at least over the course of a kilometer or so where I was likely to go. And that way I would know if I saw new tracks without my track in it, that they had returned.
That's good thinking. I like the way you applying good logic there. It's definitely a moment, right? If you see a track within your track, you're like, that is definitely very fresh.
Yeah. I mean, that's a bit of sort of archaeology thinking. First thing has to get laid down, then the next, and then the next. And so you can tell. It took me a couple days to come up with that, but it's because I kept going back to that initial water source where they had dropped me off. There's a beautiful little pool right there. And I kept wondering, are these fresh? And then it occurred to me, well, why don't I get rid of them, and then I'll know.
For sure. Yeah, then you'll know. Okay, speaking of archaeology then, which is, I know, a big passion of yours.
Yeah.
And potentially the cost of a sable for you.
Yeah.
You said that there were some, you were at least looking, but did you find any artifacts? You found some interesting objects whilst you were there?
I did. I found 3 different structures or remnants of structures.
Okay.
They were circular, about 10 feet in diameter, made of stone, circular stones, and perhaps about 2 or 3 feet high. I wasn't really able to determine who made them, what period they were from. I did find some very small fragments of European-based artifacts, tiny pieces of thick glass, which suggested it was old, some small pieces of ceramic, which looked like a salt glaze, which I thought would be old. So could have been some sort of European or Boer settlement or something, or who knows. But I also found I had a very steep bank to this initial spot where they dropped me off. I keep mentioning there was a pool, but to get from there to where I camped, there was a very steep, eroded drop off. And at the very base of that, so the ground would be, 8 feet up, and I'd have to find my way down to the base of that. And at the very base of it, I found a hand axe. I found a tool much like something like this.
Amazing.
Embedded in the side of that embankment.
Wow.
And this is something I've recreated from the local stone.
Okay, but what kind of rock was it? It's like is that a very red rock there? Is it?
It is when it's when it has weathered. When it's weathered, it has this reddish hue to it.
Yes.
But when you break it open, it's this black. And I believe it's a type of basalt. I think it's a basaltic rock of some sort.
Interesting. I had no idea that the inside of those rocks is black. I've hopped over many 1,000 of those.
You have probably walked over a lot of artifacts, because in my experience, this appeared as a stratum that was eroded. When you're in any kind of valley situation, this was at a particular level where it had been exposed in the valley, and almost everywhere I found it exposed, there was some evidence of it having been worked. So I mean, people have been there, people and pre-people have been there for so long that I think they've taken just hundreds and thousands of opportunities to work that stone. So I found something like this, very much this size and shape and level of sophistication. I reported it to the production team, and they said, leave it alone. So that's what I did. I left it right where it is. It's still in that location. But I was fortunate enough to be able to pick up some raw stone and to sort of recreate it, to have that experience and to have this to show.
That's so interesting. Actually, also curious, maybe that's something which, I don't know if we are or are not allowed to talk about it. So there is actually a team of people who you need to contact. If you find something, just let them know there's something here. Like an artifact or something that you don't want to mess with. I'm guessing also often the show is in places where it's got a lot of importance. The land has a spiritual importance, or it's indigenous peoples. It has a value to it in some way.
Yes.
I'm guessing. So that's interesting. I didn't know that.
That is often the case. Now, I'm not privy to all of the cultural sensitivities, but you're absolutely right. And certainly in the cases where they've filmed in Canada, they're very often on First Nation lands. Yes. And so in addition to following whatever the local hunting regulations are and whatever the show regulations are, the First Nations people can also say, hey, listen, this particular animal is meaningful to us. So even though the Canadian laws will allow you to take it, we are going to ask you not to. This is important to us, so you cannot. And that can go for places too, I suppose. So there are those sensitivities and additional factors that come into play. And that may have been the case with those structures. I reported those. They asked me not to film them, and certainly not to mess with them. Though in a true survival situation, I would have immediately moved into one of those.
Yes.
But I would, in this situation, I would much prefer to respect the wishes of whoever it was, and to leave them well alone.
It's interesting when you say a round structure. Obviously I can't see what you're describing exactly, but someone who I had the pleasure of interviewing Renius from Longo and Alex van den Heever, who are like master trackers in South Africa. They're able to deduce unbelievable things. They actually like track. They've tracked leopards for presidents just in like a tourist sense, so they can deduce the most unbelievable things from the bird calls or all sorts of stuff like that. But anyway, Renius actually grew up on Kruger National Park, which is before it was called Kruger. And he actually described to me in a story, you made me think of that they had very traditional houses, that they would be nomadic at that point. This is quite a long time ago. And they would build round houses of stone and then have simple roofs put on top. And that would be a place where they were for a while the going was good, and then they would move. So
Yes.
it sounds like a familiar, maybe that tradition has been going on for a very long time.
That was my supposition, because I had tried to do what research I could on the indigenous peoples of the area and areas that were fairly close. And it seems like the round structure is very common in Africa. And it makes tremendous sense to me, because in terms of building, if you build a circular structure, that is the smallest radius, the smallest circumference for the maximum amount of volume inside. It's a very efficient. It's so you're building the least amount of wall for getting the greatest amount of protected area.
Yes.
It's incredibly efficient, and then structurally, of course, it's incredibly efficient as well. So our propensity for straight lines and corners, it doesn't make sense when you think of it in terms of natural materials and efficiency. So it made all the sense in the world to me. I had read and seen that the San tended to make these dome-like wiki-up structures.
Yes.
And I further supposed the ground was very hard. I mean, very hard. Like you couldn't really dig in it. And so planting your poles to make your dome structure would be a bit of a hassle. Suddenly it gets a lot easier if you put down a ring of stones. Then you can just jam the end of your trees between the thick, heavy stones, and the bottom won't go anywhere.
Yes.
And then you could easily lean them into form a dome. Now that's sort of me speculating, a few different things. Knowing they use this wiki-up structure, seeing that it was hard to dig, there are a lot of rocks, and just kind of making a guess.
No, but I think it does make sense. It does make sense. It's interesting as well if you think about teepees as well. They're round. Like it's interesting what you're saying about minimizing the amount of resources to maximize the usable space. It's a really interesting idea I've never thought about before. Yeah,
igloos are that way. Wigwams are that way. It's a very interesting principle and very, very clever.
It's like square buildings are kind of a luxury of modern, like a frivolity almost.
Yeah.
That's so curious. Okay, so I guess I have one more question. Other than obviously you had some real realizations about water and access to consistent clean water and the luxury of it, were there any other revelations or moments that really changed your perspective or surprised you whilst you were there?
Yeah, there's something that really stands out to me. So for whatever reason, my upbringing or my constitution or my role models, I don't know, but I've grown up with having a very sort of critical inner monologue. The way I've motivated myself through life is by admonishing myself, by saying things like, you could do better, or, that was very stupid. And sometimes the language is much, much harsher than what I'm saying to you. So for whatever reason, this has been the way I talk to myself and the way I motivate myself. It's been effective to some degree. I've accomplished a lot in life, I hope.
Yeah.
But I was able to make some sort of shift out there. And I'm not entirely sure what it's all about. Possibly because I was alone, but being filmed for this future audience. But I found that I was able to treat myself as a friend. So while I was out there, I just was supportive of myself. Instead of, after losing a fish, and instead of saying, "Oh, you're an idiot. That was so stupid." Why, instead of going into something like that, I found myself saying, "Well, I hadn't gotten that close to getting a fish yet. I'm one step closer to getting a fish. You'll get a fish next time." And it was just sort of a very wonderful way to start interacting with myself and with reality as a whole. Just a lot less stressful and less harsh. And whatever caused it, I feel very blessed to have stumbled upon that way of operating in the world and in relationship with myself.
Do you find yourself falling back into those habits now that you're back in kind of the modern world, or are you able to realize when you're going down that path and kind of adjust your thinking again?
So both. I definitely have found myself drifting back into those old tendencies, the sort of harsh inner monologue. But I have also noticed myself catching myself doing it. Saying something like, I drop a coffee cup and I say, "You're such an idiot." And I say, "Hey, wait a minute. Would I say that to my best friend? Would I say that to a child? No, it was a mistake, So I have learned that to catch myself more, and I am conscious that it is a way you can live in that way. I did it for 2 weeks under these very extreme, stressful situations, and so even if I'm not doing it perfectly from day to day now, I know it's possible. I know I can do it. I've done it. Yeah. And so even if it's not fully living it, it's something that I can aspire to, and because I know it can be done.
It's inspiring. Yeah, it's amazing how perspective can change, and the world is actually a very consistent and sometimes indifferent place, but the way that we see it and the way that we process it can be so vastly different just based on some electrical signals in our brain, which we do have some more control over than maybe we think that we do.
Right.
Do you want to adjust your thing? It seems like it's pulling your earpiece out and all kinds of stuff there. Sorry, I know you're uncomfortable. So whatever you need to do, man.
Yeah. All right. Sorry, I'm going to come a little bit closer.
Okay.
Give myself some slack.
Don't you worry.
All right.
This is great, man. This is good.
All right. Yeah, it's it's a tenet of Stoicism to be able to recognize that which you have control over and that which you don't have control over, and to fret over the things that you have no control over is a waste of time and energy. But one thing that we almost always have control over is how we react to the events that are occurring.
Yes.
And so losing that fish, I could say, why did the universe do this to me? Or I'm such an idiot for not setting that hook. But it's already done. It's gone. It's not going to change. I can change my reaction and say, well, that's the closest I've come to getting a fish.
Yeah. That
means I'm closer than I've ever been to getting a fish. That means I might get a fish the next time. And that's something you can control. And it's a great thing to kind of become aware of.
I really relate to what you're saying as well, though, because I've kind of been on not exactly the same journey, but I've been on a bit of a process myself the last, year and a half. And this might be a bit of an overshare. but it's something I've been doing. I've been meditating for 10 years more, something like that. And so I've always been very conscious of trying to do mental practices, things which help you with controlling stress and anxiety and also your perspective. But something I've actually been doing as an experiment. When someone first told me this to me, I laughed. I actually laughed. But writing a gratitude journal is something which I initially thought was a really dumb idea. And it simmered in my brain for maybe 6 months before I even tried it. And actually, I've got it here now. It's got mushrooms on it, of course. And so I make an effort every day to meditate, but also then to write, just try and think about and write some things that I'm grateful for every day. And it was really difficult at first. And it was hard to find those things. But then it's actually weirdly become a real joy.
Yes.
To just kind of become absorbed thinking about and almost get carried away thinking about all the different things. And being able to just write like almost, maybe a page of things that I'm grateful for. And the way, and actually directly, immediately feeling how that makes me feel in the moment of those 5-10 minutes that I write. It's unbelievable how much it can change your perspective on everything. And now, whereas I think before, and obviously there are outliers in this, I'm not saying I'm perfectly happy all the time. There are definite moments of depression or grumpiness or whatever you might want to call it. But looking around at the world and actually actively searching for things that I'm happy about or I'm grateful for, it's weird. It's like I've trained my brain to see things that way. And it sounds like that's kind of the bit of the process you went through when you were there.
I actually practiced listing things that I was grateful for when I was in my sleeping arrangement every night, staring up at that beautiful, beautiful, amazing southern sky. I would just list it. They didn't show any of this on television, but I did it every night. And even if it was repetitive, I would just do it. And it's always uplifting, and it can become a very positive creative process to like try and think of things that you're grateful for that you haven't even thought of before. And it can be endless, and it's an amazing practice.
Yeah, like a powerful tool as well. I think that's
Really
a lovely
is.
thing, right?
Really
If you these tools exist, and they're in some ways, I'm sure, probably very ancient tools. But I think just knowing that those things exist also gives you confidence that if you're going through a bit of a tough time or outside factors that you don't have control over suddenly put you in a difficult situation, knowing, okay, well, I've got these things out there which can keep me level, and it doesn't have to be the worst thing ever. Times will change. It's just, I think that gives you like an extra confidence in life.
It definitely does. I've got another one for you that's very easy, and that can be applied sort of like in the moment of a problem. And that is to ask yourself, so you've run into something, it's terrible, it's bad, you're not feeling good about it. Force yourself to ask and to answer, what's great about this? At first, this is pretty hard. But as you practice it, you'll find that you can answer that. And I try to give like 10 answers. I try to make myself, the first 2 are okay, but by the time I get to the end of it, I'm starting to believe it. And certainly my whole perspective on the situation and the nature of the problem has changed.
That's interesting. It's almost, and jump in if this doesn't sound right, but it's almost like you're accelerating a mini grieving process for whatever difficult thing has happened, right? Like you going through the acceptance and understanding and then building and seeing positivity from it.
I hadn't thought of it that way, but certainly in saying what's great about this is you are accepting the situation. You're saying, okay, but then you start enumerating, maybe that's teaching me that I could have done that a better way. Oh, maybe I shouldn't be, maybe I'm focusing on the wrong priority, and you can just start listing the things. And if you get really into this, return to the same situation if you can, if you've journaled it, return to that situation in a week or so and see how you feel. about the situation and see how much of that seems true. And you might be surprised.
I'm going to give that a try. Thanks.
Yeah,
Doug.
because you start looking, you can almost start looking forward to adversity because
Yes.
you have this way to reframe it as a positive experience.
And also, adversity is like the source of most good stories.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So,
Oh, yeah.
you've always got that in your mind too.
Yeah.
Okay, so while we've discussed some excellent mental tools, I think it might be high time for us to discuss an excellent physical tool that you created in the Leatherman that you made for this season of Alone. Now, we could talk about this for hours on end, so I guess I want to go into some kind of middle ground of detail. But
Right.
it's an incredible object. You've got all kinds, I see sort of like things that look like drill bits or all kinds of different things coming out of it, like big saws and files. Talk me through
Yeah.
it. I feel like this Leatherman has been a passion, like a making, what's the word I'm trying to use? It's been in the making, that's the one, for longer than just like, oh, you're going to get on Alone, I'm going to make this cool tool. Like, I feel like you've been working on this thing for a long time. Is that right?
Yeah, you're very right about that. So I had a chance to be cast to season 8 back in 2020.
Okay.
And I started making some modifications to my Leatherman at that time, largely based on modifications that I had seen made by season 6 contestant Wonia Thibault, and also from Alone Frozen. She had a number of really great innovations on her Leatherman. So I thought, well, if they're going to let those through, I'm going to go ahead and make those changes. So a bunch of my changes came from her, but I didn't get onto that season, but my development on my Leatherman didn't stop. So I just kept working on it. And so now this is a Leatherman Surge, and there's only 3 tools on it that I haven't modified. So, and it's full of tools, but I only left 3 of them alone. And that would be the pliers. Those
Yeah.
are standard.
Yeah.
The main knife blade,
Okay. That one's
that's unchanged. And then the tool that they refer to, it's on this side, as an awl. I kind of have a different thought about it, but this tool that they refer to as an awl with a little hole in the center of it for
I always
sewing.
think of that. Okay, I thought it was like a hoof picking thing or something like that, but maybe that's just my own imagination running wild.
Yeah, I mean, it sure could be.
Yeah.
I think of it as a reamer because it's very good for putting into a small hole. It's got this single bevel blade.
A single bevel, so you can twist it.
Twist it and you can open up a small hole. And then it could be used for sewing if you like, though I don't like the idea of sewing through a slit, but you could definitely do it.
Yes.
But those are the only things I left alone on this. Everything else has been modified or added, not original stuff. Do you want me to walk you through some of that?
Yeah, go. What's your favorite things? Things
All
that
right,
you
well-
were, also things that you were out there and you were like, I'm so happy. I mean, you must have been feeling smug with that in your pocket.
Oh yeah. Well, the only option for a saw on the Surge is to go into this swappable tool holder, which takes jigsaw blades.
Okay.
So that saw ends up being very short. It ends up being pretty wobbly and wonky. So
Just a couple
I
of
took
inches long, it looks like.
yeah. So I took a saw blade out of a different Leatherman model called the Mutt, the M-U-T Mutt, and modified it so that it would fit into one of the large slots on the outsides of the handle. So there are 4 tools that you can get to from the outside without opening the handles.
Yes.
So, and this can be opened one-handed. So just a
That's
nice
much
thing to
longer
have.
blade.
And it's a much longer blade, and it's just much sturdier than putting it in that swappable slot. That thing is it holds the tools fine, but just the extension and the way that the tools are held in there, it's just not that rigid. So
Okay.
this makes for a much more robust saw, which for bushcraft survival tasks is way better.
Yeah, you can cut a pretty large piece of like branch or something with that. It's
Yeah,
pretty
yeah.
professional.
You really could.
Okay.
So I also, one of the other options for that swappable slot is a file. It has a diamond hone on one side and a file on the other. I take my files very seriously. That's from my time working as a clock restorer. I didn't like that one, so I modified a mill file, a Nicholson mill file, and custom fit it so it could go into one of these large slots and lock in just the way it's supposed to, like any of the other large tools. So it's got file edges on both
monster
sides.
file. It's so good that you
Yeah,
managed to fit that in a Leatherman, man. This is such a good
yeah,
hack.
yeah, and it's a good fit too. It's really nice. So that raises the question: what did I put in this swappable slot here?
Yeah.
And I chose two different types of. I chose between two different types of drill bits to make large holes.
Yeah.
This was my first idea, and it requires that you take the bit out and make a brace and bit to drill. This is a 5/8 inch bit. It works pretty well, but I ultimately decided to go with this one, which is a 3/8 inch bit. And the reason I went with it is I discovered that if you mount it into a spindle and then arrange it into a bow drill like you're making a friction fire, this can drill a 3/8 inch hole very quickly.
Okay, nice.
And this is exactly how the ancient Egyptians drilled holes. So it's tried and true. It's been thousands of years in the making, and it's almost like having a power drill out there because you've got the mechanical advantage of the bow making this spin so fast, and you've got the downward pressure that you can apply using a bearing block. So it really works quite well. You can't use it in the tool wouldn't hold up to it. But if you need to drill a lot of holes, it works great.
So did you make some tools then, like whilst you were there? Because I love that principle that you had, like it's a tool for making more tools. Did you manage to have time to do that? Or I guess you were so busy, you said running around getting water and all the other things, right?
Yeah, I didn't. I collected some scrap metal, but had it set aside to make something. But I didn't. I started to make a rabbit stick. I didn't finish. I was well prepared to make more tools, but I really didn't end up doing much of it. So, it's embarrassing to say that probably a stock Leatherman would have been fine, but
But at least though, it's better to be prepared with things and not need them than not have them, right?
Yeah,
At least, I
yeah,
think
for sure.
Going in mentally, that's going to help you a bunch too.
Yeah. I was prepared to do all kinds of stuff, and whereas if I would not have needed a Phillips head screwdriver for anything, So I was very well prepared to do all kinds of crafts. I just didn't get to very many of them.
So I guess one more thing I wanted to ask you about with that Leatherman, as you showed me before, is that they're the orange handles that are on that Leatherman. Mm-hmm. I like the pièce de résistance, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. It's a great addition. So talk me through. I mean, I'm sure they provided extra grip, but that's not all they did, is it?
Yeah, right. So first of all, it's really easy to lose things when you're in the backcountry and trying to get 1,000 things done, trying to survive, and trying to film everything. It's so easy to misplace things, and so making them bright orange is just a huge help to not lose one of my most valuable tools.
Yeah.
If you've ever used a Leatherman for a large project and done a lot of carving, you find that it's really not all that comfortable. And adding these rubberized grips actually does help considerably because you don't have to grip it with such a death grip. These really help you keep a hold of it without, kind of doing the death grip on it. And then finally, these are made with a thin sheet of metal that then is dipped in Plasti Dip to build up the layers. And I was able to take full advantage of that in making, for example, this fishing lure, which is the missing piece you see right here. This was that piece right there. I simply punched a hole in this end and in this end, attached a hook here, and I had a brightly colored spoon that actually did attract the fish. So I'm quite happy with how that worked out.
Yeah. So you caught fish with this. You caught fish with
did.
that.
Yep. Yep.
That must be such a good moment.
Yeah, they don't feature it much in the show, but at one point I'm picking up a catfish and I say, I think the tables may have just turned, and you can see this sticking out of the fish's mouth.
Yes, I remember that now. So good. We'll see what the rules are next time.
Yeah, I suspect this might be in the "this is too good" category, because it is sort of like bringing fishing lure with you.
But still, though, yeah. I mean, like, to be honest, you made the modifications to it on site at the, in the Karoo, right? Like, you punched the holes, you did that stuff. So you had something in your mind, but like, how could you possibly? You can't say, "Oh no grips are allowed on anything," right? So I don't know.
Now we will see.
I might just get away with that one, though.
I mean, I certainly did for this season. But they add new rules every year, depending on what people have figured out and how they weigh it against, fairness and what they want to see from people on the show. So, we'll just have to see how that goes.
So there's something that I wanted to ask you a little bit about. Like, I see when we're talking now, like the excitement that you have in making things and the passion for projects, and it's fantastic. It's contagious. It makes me want to go and look at my Leatherman now with more detail.
Yeah.
But you also, I mean, like, that's a pretty advanced thinking, modern piece of technology you've got that with that Leatherman. But you also have this, like, dare I say, obsession with traditional skills, and a lot of the content that you have on your YouTube is showing these skills in action. And I'd love to go through your thoughts on some of those things. Like, it's really interesting, like the projectile weapons that you make, and kind of the historical references that you make when you make those, and also making arrowheads from all kinds of different things, obviously from obsidian, but also from like glass and waste that's thrown away and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, it's super curious. I've given you a bunch of things there, but like, whatever.
Where do you want to start? Because I like all of those.
And making fire as well, right? Like
my favorite.
The art. Well, let's start there. The art of making fire.
I think I really, my passion for primitive skills started with learning how to make friction fire, and that began with bow drill. It's something I had heard about as a kid, and then in my 20s, I had dedicated one full day to trying to make a bow drill fire based on instructions in a book. The internet was just starting. There was no YouTube. As far as I know, there weren't videos showing how to do it. So I was going entirely based off of written instructions in a book, and I couldn't do it. I couldn't figure it out. In hindsight, I probably had succeeded, but the critical thing that I didn't know is what success looked like when you had managed to achieve a smoldering dust pile.
Okay.
When you have made that dust pile start to smolder on its own, you have created the beginnings of an ember that can be blown into flame. So I was looking for flame or something like a spark, or I didn't know what I was looking for, but really you're looking for a little pile of wood dust that is smoking on its own like a small cone incense. It's just that.
Yeah.
And you give that some space and some time and a little bit of air, and suddenly it turns into, a cherry like the end of a cigar, a glowing red cherry that then you drop into a tinder bundle and you can blow into flame. And I first succeeded with that back in, I think, 2018. And I describe it as the closest thing to magic that I've ever felt personally. I mean, I had a rock, 3 sticks, and a piece of string, and I turned that into fire. And that just struck me as, I don't know, just magical, just impressive, incredible, some kind of bizarre alchemy. And I was kind of hooked from that point, I started trying every kind of fire making method that I could find.
It's so interesting how I think there are some things primordial, I don't know exactly what the word is I'm thinking, but in our minds, things that just feel good, right? They're basic skills. And I'm sure I haven't played around with making fire myself, other than like the easier ways, of course, but I can only imagine how satisfying that is on a purely basic level.
Yeah.
And then also maybe compared to things like sourcing your own food, understanding plant species or berries or mushrooms, feeding yourself, hunting, taking an animal and surviving that way, and fishing, eating from the land and using the things around you to make tools. It's such a powerful, deeply natural thing, right?
Yeah, fire is so powerful. In terms of a right here and now survival situation, or 1.5 million years ago when Homo erectus was moving out of Africa and into the colder regions of the planet. And this, it provides warmth, protection, helps you process food, helps you make tools. It provides light, a social space. You can stay up at night and socialize, and it's entertainment. It's just a complete game changer. And to sort of put yourself back in the shoes of a person that needed fire that badly, and who had somehow figured out this process, or one of many processes, to make fire from the landscape. For me personally, I feel a connection, even though I don't know them. I'll never see them. I don't know exactly what their life was like, but in that moment when I've succeeded in making fire from things off the landscape, I believe that I feel some of that joy that they must have felt.
Yeah, absolutely. And that connection, I think, it's a powerful thing. It's easy for humans, us now, modern man, to forget our connection with historic man.
Yeah.
But it exists, it's real. I heard a fact the other day, which may not relate to everyone in America, but there's an area in England called Cheddar Gorge. It's a funny name. It sounds like it should be a theme park. But they discovered some very ancient remains.
Cheddar Man?
Yeah, okay, well, there you go. You know about this better than I. But they did the tests on this mummified or preserved person, and then they found someone who today, who they are directly related to in the same area.
Yeah.
And this is someone like thousands of years ago. And it's like, that's the great, however many to the power of great grandfather. I mean, unbelievable, right? It's a hard concept to fathom.
It is. And as a species, Homo sapiens, our bodies haven't changed meaningfully in, more than 100,000 years. And so all of these things around us, this technology and the houses and the cars and, all of that stuff, it's stuff. We are no different. And that means that people just like us knew how to survive and thrive all across the globe with things that they could find and modify in the natural environment. It's mind-blowing, and I have so much respect for our ancestors and for people to this day who continue to practice, that way of life.
Yeah.
It's where we came from.
Exactly. Yeah, it's so interesting. It's also, I remember reading once in, I forget his name again now, The Journal of a Trapper, but it was during the trapping era. The guy there who was out in the boonies, meeting people who had lived there for many generations, and there were people he was meeting in certain remote valleys who were still using bows and arrows, but the bows were made from antlers, which is just so wild, right? Like that's
Yeah.
such a, it's just utilizing things that are around you in order
Yeah.
to make tools is exactly, I mean, it's a case in point, but it's just so, yeah, it's such an interesting world that's so far from what we're used to now.
Yeah, it is, and we give ourselves a tremendous amount of credit for all of these things that we have. But if I look across the room at that television set, do I know how that works? Not really.
Yeah.
I can't
Yeah.
fix it. You know, um, my car, I could do a little bit, but I can't refine the fuel. So, there's this complex system, but it's so far beyond our ability as individuals to create or to understand fully. It's beyond us now. It's a system that's well beyond our understanding as individuals. But there was a time where people knew enough about where they lived and the animals there and the plants there and the seasons and the stars, that they could make a living, that they could survive there comfortably, generation after generation, without all of these things that are come from halfway across the world or from 1,000 feet underground. And it's just amazing to consider that those were the same creatures that we are. That was us.
Yeah. Maybe the idea of value and wealth is more in the knowledge and understanding that we have in a place than the possessions we own or the amount of finances that we have. It's an interesting concept that's very different from normal convention these days.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Well, hopefully we can continue to build our wealth with skills and knowledge and all those things.
Yeah, I mean, practicing these things, I mean, at the very least, it's a way to remember that the skills exist, and that people, very clever people, figured them out and mastered them and passed them down through generations. And that we can still incorporate them into our lives if we choose, and there might be some real benefits to that.
Yeah. Amen to that. That's for sure. Doug, I'm conscious. I think we're getting to time now. So that we could talk at great length about the many ancient skills and all kinds of things that you've made a bunch of interesting videos and interesting content about. And I urge people, if they want to learn more about all the things we've kind of mentioned, then they should head over to Doug's Instagram and YouTube and all those things, because he's got so much good stuff out there, delivered in his own charming way. So, yeah, I mean, unless, Doug, there's something else that you would like dying to share with us today, or you're hoping that I asked you about, we can start to wrap up.
I think we've covered things, pretty well, for, in the time that we've given ourselves. If I ever get the chance to meet you in person, I would love to teach you how to make a friction fire.
Yeah. Oh, game on. I would love to do that. I'd love to be your student.
I think it'll be one of those points in your life where you can measure before and after. I don't think it's something you'll forget.
Okay. Well, call it a challenge. Accepted.
All right. This has been great.
Okay.
Thank you.
No, thank you, Doug. Is there anything else in the works that you want to talk about or mention or promote or send people?
Well, I am very excited about my budding YouTube channel, which is just Doug North, DUGNORTH. So if you look that up on YouTube, you'll find my content. I'm working on a whole bunch of new projects, and I'm excited to get those up and continue sharing more about primitive skills, historical elements, and more of what I learned during my time in South Africa.
Perfect. And speaking of that, we should actually mention the final episode of Alone will be going live Thursday, August the 21st, 10 p.m. Eastern Time, which I think is 7 p.m. Pacific Time on the History Channel. And then if you're watching online, you've got to wait You've got to
Yeah.
wait until the next day. So yeah, be sure to check it out and check out the whole season. It's a great one. So yeah, I've been enjoying
Yeah.
watching it.
Yeah,
Doug, thank
it's
you
good.
again. And
Thank you.
hopefully at some point, I'd love to get you back on and chat. Like we can clearly go down a lot of rabbit holes about life
yeah.
in general. So
Yeah, anytime you want, we could do flint napping or whatever you want. I'm up for it.
perfect. Thanks, Doug.
Thank you.
Right, that's another episode done and dusted. I'm proud to say that was a great one. I really enjoyed that conversation. If you enjoyed it too, then by all means, leave a comment. I'd love any feedback, anything that you think could be done better, or if there's any other guests in your mind that you think would be good for me to reach out to, or if you even know someone. That doesn't have to be well-known people who've been on television like Doug. It could be someone who you know who happens to have an amazing connection with nature in their own way. Once again, I want to say a big thank you to Doug North for sharing his time with us. Also, a thank you to the History Channel and Alone for giving me access to him so early. It's been a real privilege to get under the skin of the show and this particular season and hear his perspective. If you haven't watched it already, then by all means, get on the History Channel. The final episode is going live this Thursday, August 21st, 10 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Pacific Time. Right. I think that's everything from me. Apart from to say, of course, one last thing. If you did enjoy this episode, give us a subscribe, give us a follow, do all the things that people who enjoy podcasts do. It's always appreciated and every little bit helps. Right. That's all from me. Thanks for listening. And until next time.
Welcome to the Wild Dispatch.